listening to PBR Podcasts Radio.
Heineken? Fuck that shit! Pass through ribbon!
What's up? It's PBR Radio. We're back with another episode. This is the third week in a row. We're killing it. We're really making a pattern out of it, keeping up good habits. I am Geoff Tate. I'm here with Brett Arnold, the co-host and producer of the show. We've got a great show lined up for you. We're the news. We have a eyewitness to the bleacher fight at Monday's Chicago White Sox St. Louis Cardinals game. We'll be talking to her, Megan Sanders, in a few minutes. After that, we have a doctor, a PhD doctor, not like a useful doctor, but like a books doctor. We got a books doctor to tell us about Amazon buying MGM and what that means for No Time to Die and the whole James Bond catalog. That'll coming up. Dr. Peter Labuza.
That's right. At Labuza Movies on Twitter.com.
Right. We recorded that yesterday. That's why I don't have a haircut yet. So you're going to see it and be like, what?
That I was wondering what was different about you.
Well, I'm not wearing a hat or a hoodie and I got a haircut.
You're a whole different person.
I'm a whole different person with my hair. That is kind of a Warren Zevon song. Look, can you see it?
Yeah, looks great. Look at that. It's like Mohawkian.
Yeah, it's Mohawkian. It's the Hawkeye haircut from Endgame. I sent my barber. I got a barber. I sent him a picture of Hawkeye. I Googled Hawkeye Endgame haircut and sent it to him. I've done this before. In fact, the first time he cut my hair in like 2014 or 13 or something, I showed him a picture of Brad Pitt from the movie Fury.
Oh, and wow.
It's similar to this, but yeah, it's similar to this, but it's like the top is longer and there's no mohawk on the back.
So you're not kidding? You bring a picture to the barber?
Why not?
I love that.
And then I don't get a haircut. Like I've done it like maybe 3 times. It's usually like I just let it go long enough to start over. Like this, I'll have this for the summer and then I'll probably buzz it all the way down. And then let that grow out for a few months and then do something else.
Yeah, I started in COVID just buzzing for the first time because I've just been slowly balding anyway, and my hairline's been slowly receding. So for the first time in COVID, started shaving my head, and I'm never going back to hair.
Never going back. Are you gonna go look up the word slowly? Because I think you're using it wrong.
Why? Oh, is it back already? Yeah.
No, it's just a.
My 5 head. No, it's gone. Yes.
6.
If that's what you're talking about. Yes. Slowly. Yes. It's
not. I don't notice it until I see a picture of me from when I was young and my hairline is like down here.
Yeah, man. That actually just fucked me up looking at my own head. We should never do we shouldn't do video anymore. This is horrible.
No, just keep it at the angle you're at. Where
there we go.
Yeah, where it cuts it off. Just keep it at the eyebrows up, and then no one knows.
I'm beautiful. Look how beautiful I am.
It's you got your camera angled at the Fred Durst, right? It's the Fred Durst line right above here. So he's always got that hat pulled down, and then you never know.
Is that why he does it? Does he have hair problems?
He's for sure bald, but I have no idea because I've never seen it. But there's no way you wear a hat every day. There's not a single picture of him without a hat on. Come on.
My dad's theory for why my hair is like this, I'll show you again, is that I wear hats every day. I think that's heinous
nonsense.
bullshit. Isn't it bullshit?
It's
not
just
real.
It's because your dad's old and they didn't have they just like that was how they did stuff back then.
That was how medicine worked.
Yeah. Right? You're like,
well,
my cousin went blind. Oh, he probably jacked off too much. Like they don't.
This would have been a perfect time for me to have a photo of my dad's head ready. My dad, who has the same exact bald spot I do, saying that gaslighting me into saying wearing hats is the problem.
Right? They don't have no idea.
Genetics.
They don't. Yeah, it's just genetics. Right? I wear a hat all the time.
Yeah,
and
with baseball teams you don't even like on them.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I like them all about the same. Every team I have a hat for, I like about the same. I don't. You'll never see me in a Cardinals hat or a Red Sox hat or a Yankees hat. But any other hat, I like the same. If you do see me in one of those, it was either a gift or a really, really matched a hoodie. But I doubt it. I don't think I'm gonna.
My uncle, whose initials are LA, wears a Dodgers hat. Who's a Cubs fan, just because it says LA. Isn't that kind of? Do you think that's silly?
No, really. I think a hat with your own initials on it is way better than any other hat you could get. Although I'll never wear, like, I've never worn a Georgia Tech hat. But if a Georgia Tech hat had the Dodgers colors,
like calligraphy and font, yeah, right. The LA on the hat looks nice. I'm for it.
It's clean, man. There's nothing wider than a Dodgers jersey. I don't know how they do it because every team's home jersey is white. Yeah, and somehow that Dodgers white is just so clean. It's so much cleaner than anything else that it's. But I mean, I got a Dodgers hat. I like the Dodgers fine.
I have Dodgers stuff because my fiance is a big fan. So she has a lot of stuff, and I probably bought like 1 or 2 articles for when we go to a Dodgers game, which we do every year when they play the Mets. Yeah.
Not when they play the Yankees.
I don't. Well, I used to live off the 7 train, which is right where the Mets play. So it just used to be for convenience why I would go to Mets games. I don't know why I don't go to Yankee games now. I've been to 1 in my life.
I mean, I would probably go to 1.
Where the Mets City Field, where the Mets play, is actually like a great park. There's not a bad seat in there, and the food is really great. So like, it's a great ballpark to go to. I would love to like do the whole visit every ballpark thing.
Oh yeah, it's fun. I've definitely I've been to a lot. I've finally been to I think as many current ones as ones that no longer exist. As I went to a lot more.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, you can't even count the current Wrigley as. I guess Wrigley hasn't changed as much as other ones. Wrigley has like a fucking screen now.
I've only been to Wrigley twice.
That surprises me. I don't know why I think people from Ohio like would be going to a ton of Cubs games. But you were a Cubs
people
fan.
From Chicago go to a ton of Reds games.
That's true.
Right? It's within that radius where there's no real road game for the Cubs. Although it's since 2016 it's kind of dropped off.
Yeah.
But the fact is I could see him 12 times here. Like I don't have to go to Chicago. And going to Chicago for a baseball game doesn't seem that much fun. Baseball's not really I don't care enough. I think I'm going to go to a Pittsburgh game and a Detroit game because I haven't been to either of those stadiums yet.
Right on.
And a White Sox game would be fun. It'd be fun to see. I think Troy pulled this off once. My brother, I think he went to a Cubs game and a White Sox game in the same day.
Yeah, that would be awesome. It's a long fucking day, but
it'd be worth it.
It'd be worth it. Yeah.
But you just got to find, it's like really only possible on Sunday where one of the teams is playing at night.
Right.
There's not that many.
That doesn't happen very often. Yeah. It's probably like maybe one instance of that a month. Not even. That seems very
it's hard
rare.
to do because most Sunday games are day games. So it would probably be, I think at the time, I think the White Sox game was the night game, but now it's much more likely for the Cubs game to be the night game.
That's true. And there's already been a bunch of double headers this year because of COVID stuff. So like that would actually help your odds in getting a weird,
The double headers are dumb now with the 7 innings.
Yeah.
They just keep fucking with it, making it.
Baseball keeps changing rules every year.
I don't know. Here's what I want to understand. Here's the thing I don't know yet. That runner on second in the extra innings.
Yeah.
Who is it? How do they decide who goes to second? Do they just pick one? Is it somebody off the bench?
That's a good question.
Can that person not be used again? Is that person? Can that
I think
person
I've
be
seen
put on
this
second
happen
in the
a couple
10th
games,
game?
and I haven't paid attention to what's happening. Yeah, I don't
know. I just don't know. Like, I have no idea if it's like, are they now the ghost runner for the rest of the? Because every extra innings starts with a runner on second now. So is that person off your roster, or is it just a pure ghost thing where like whatever happens there doesn't count? Does that guy get credit for a run scored?
Yeah, it gets really confusing. I have no idea. I have no
it's
answers.
Stupid.
Yeah, overly complicated. What? For what? To end the game a little quicker?
Right.
I don't really understand.
And it should be like, if you're going to do that, then you should start. Like, if you want to end the game quicker, don't wait till the 10th to do it. Start the 7th with a runner on second. Like, every time you get to the 7th inning, you get a runner on second. And like, or just do like random stuff like that throughout. You know how like when you play. All right, so here's what I'm thinking.
Jeff's
like,
gonna fix baseball.
No, I'm not gonna fix it. I'm gonna make it like this will make it way worse. But like, remember, like, you ever played Tetris and how sometimes like you would start a new level or whatever, and it would be a different stack to make it harder or whatever. Like, that's how it should be. The first 3 innings should be clean. No runners on, nobody out. But the 4th inning should be a runner on third with 1 out. It should just start like that. Like, in the 5th inning should be a runner on second and nobody out. And the 8th inning should be first and third with 2 outs is how it starts. Like, just if you're gonna start with a runner on second in the 10th, speed things up, then do it a lot.
Yeah, it's the irony of like, we're doing this to speed things up as the game's already extending longer than it's supposed to.
Right.
Like,
if you want to speed up the game,
wait.
The real way, like, if I was gonna fix baseball, I would get like, give your instant replay, you got 5 seconds, because that's 5,000 times more time than you had at that moment. And so if you can't tell after 5 seconds, then the call stands. You don't get to do frame by frame. You don't get to take a whole minute. You got 5 seconds, because they put instant replay in to keep from fucking up that perfect game that guy threw. Like, that guy threw that Galarraga threw that perfect game, and that guy fucked up the call, lost the perfect game. Then they came out with instant replay because they want to avoid that. 5 seconds is enough time to avoid that.
I think you're right. That's a good one.
I'm absolutely right.
Yeah.
Everything else after that is when you're like, oh, did he, like, when they would do like the slide across second and then the throw to first for the double play. Now they're going frame by frame to see, did he have the ball in control, sliding across, like all of that. Like, that was an out for 130 years. And then now they got this, all because they want to avoid that play at first in that perfect game, which would take, all you have to do is all you need to do for that is to just see it. You could just watch it again in real time and be like, oh yeah. Like, basically it's just like giving you a second chance at the call. You get slightly more time, but that's all you need, because everything is so bang bang. What are they doing? It's like basketball is doing the same thing, where they now, like, forever, for 80 years, if you slap the ball out of someone's hand, like as they're on the baseline or whatever, and it goes out of bounds, it's out on you, the slapper.
You're the guy that
they didn't change it. They just made it instant replay. So now you can challenge it, and they go look and they go frame by frame. And now sometimes
touched it with the little tip.
Right now, sometimes when you slap it and the ball rolls out, the slapper hand could be off for a split second while it's still like touching the fingertip of the guy who had it.
The spirit of the whole thing is lost at that point.
Yeah, you've completely lost your way when you do that, because the slapper, it should go out of bounds on the slapper. It's still, he stopped the momentum. They didn't get the basket, and it goes out of bounds. Like, it should be the slapper. knocked
This
it
is
out.
something. This makes me think of something that my dad and I often talk about because we agree on most baseball rules. I wonder. I think you will agree. There's like this faction of people who I think want to see umpires gone and have it just be like, because they have computers and tech to show you what's a strike and a ball now.
Yeah,
But
I'm kind of for it.
you are for it. That's interesting because my dad is more of like it's the error of the umpire is part of the game, and it's like, for me, I see that it's like a human thing, but the tech now exists in any other industry. If tech exists that makes something more accurate, you use it. So it's
Like
weird that they're not.
I'm all for like that. Like I'm fine with that. It's one of those things where it's like, if you do it like that, then like, is Greg Maddux any good? Because Greg Maddux was great at convincing the umpire that this pitch that is technically outside is a strike, because he just kept doing it.
Right.
And so like, you can
That's what I'm saying. You lose
like, those
a
things,
whole element of the game. Yeah.
Those, right. But is that like, what are you losing there? You're losing Greg Maddux convinced an umpire that he's throwing strikes when he isn't. Like,
yeah,
sure,
you're missing psyops.
That's a little cool, I guess. But what you make up for in the long run is there's no more fucking blown calls. Like that, what was it? The 82 World Series was decided on a blown call.
Yeah.
Like it was the Cardinals Royals, I think. And the home plate umpire fucked up the call, and
that's what happened.
Right. That's like, I don't think that should be part of it. You shouldn't also have to play the umpire.
Yeah.
Like, and everything I said about 5 seconds and instant replay and all of that, like, if you want to speed the game up, then you fucking put trackers in the balls and bases and shoes, and then and use the K zone, and those games go by so fast.
Oh man, if you didn't have, if there was no officiating in that way, and it was just like balls are balls, strikes are strikes because the ball is high tech.
Yeah.
Wow. The game would be half the time, maybe.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, and you can even still have umpires out there. Like, you still got to have, like, you have umpires out there, but it basically be like a lifeguard.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want it's to keep people from fighting each other and whatever. Like that kind of thing. Like, you don't need, but you won't have them blowing calls anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's do a pro and con. Pro, balls are balls and strikes are strikes for the first time ever. What's the con? The Greg Maddux thing. Like, I don't really.
The Greg Maddux
really
thing, the Tom Glavine, like these guys who were really good at painting the corners.
Yeah,
so to speak. Big deal. Nobody does that now.
Yeah,
First of all, nobody does that now. Everybody throws as hard as they can every time.
That's another conversation. Is this year people are having, because there's been how many fucking no hitters? Pitchers are just better now, and like,
pitchers are better, but they also keep fucking with the ball.
Yeah, they do.
So the spin rate and all that nonsense keeps, like, there's like too much information has gotten into baseball.
Yeah.
Analytics made.
It was always a stats game, but now it's like, oh my God.
It's so funny because you can look at the three big sports and see the way that they've adopted this. So analytics say it's always better to go for two. It's always better to go for it on fourth down. So football just knows the analytics and ignores it completely. They just ignore it.
Yeah.
They act like it doesn't exist, and they pretend, well, they're not taking into account whatever throughout the game, all this nonsense, which is like, no, just if you go for two every time, you're going to be, all you have to do is be successful a little over half the time, 50% plus one, and it's better for you. And odds are you're going to do better than that. You go for it on fourth down, odds are you're going to get it enough times that it's worth it. Never punt, never kick an extra point. That's what the analytics say. And the game will be more exciting, but they ignore it. Basketball says threes and layups are better and space is better. So that means that there's no more, like, what's the boring part of basketball? The 90s, when it was like bogged down, the late 90s, early 2000s, the huge dudes, the centers that couldn't move, Roy Hibbert, that kind of thing, where they're just like in the way, clogging it up. It's very, you have games that finish 85-82. So analytics, they embrace that in the NBA, and now it's like 140 to 132 People are shooting threes. People are making dope passes. There's space. People get the finishes are better. There's not as many people in the way. So you could get like more cool shit happens because of it. And then baseball is they just took away every single exciting thing that can happen except for hitting a home run. Analytics has made it so boring. Because they follow it, but it doesn't like, and it also does, it's not real in baseball. There's too many games for it to be like, it needs to be taken into account situationally. Kind of like the San Antonio Spurs. They almost made the playoffs this year. They don't shoot any threes. They still shoot a lot of twos. The numbers say not to, but their players are better at shooting twos than threes. So that particular team is better at shooting mid-range shots than three-pointers, so they shoot more mid-range shots, so therefore they win more games. But nobody ever, like, people don't steal bases anymore. We used to see people would steal 100 bases a year pretty regularly when I was a kid. And I don't like, I know it's
now, you think like half that.
I mean, I think if somebody steals 50 bases, it's bananas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Nobody bunts, nobody does. And they follow all these, like, it's not, I know that it's very easy to get caught in a, when I was a kid loop, but I can say categorically that the NBA is better and more fun to watch today than it was when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, they had like Magic Johnson was playing when I was a kid. Michael Jordan was playing when I was a kid. And when I say that it's more fun to watch now, imagine watching those guys now. Like those guys now would be unstoppable. They would still be the greatest.
What do you attribute the difference in the NBA? I know you were just talking about it, but like, why was it? It's just space. That's all it is.
Just space, yeah. Like there's more space. There's less of a focus on, having a 7-footer set up on the low block, and then so now he's down there and his defender is down there. So whenever Michael Jordan wanted to go at the rim, Bill Wennington or Will Perdue had to get the fuck out of the way. Like they had to move, or he had to go around them too. And now if he would, but if he played now, right, he did. Yeah. But if he played now, there wouldn't be anybody there. Their 5 would be out in the left corner, and everybody would be, there would be more spread around, and he'd be able to actually, because that, like, what worked for Michael Jordan was the triangle, which the triangle has so the 3 people in the triangle, it would be a clear out. It would move everybody to one side of the floor and leave Michael Jordan on the other side of the floor with just his defender, and everybody else would be on the other half essentially. And that's basically the triangle offense. And in a very like nutshell, no nuance, whatever, just like a very layman's terms. And it was to create that space for Jordan to do it. But now, if Jordan played for the Warriors, where Draymond's the center, and he clears out, and he can make he would score 45 points a game, and so would Magic. Larry Bird led the league in 3-point shot attempts one year with 85. 80 fucking 5.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Steph Curry made, in the month of
Hundreds?
April, he made more than 85 threes in April.
Yeah.
That's insane. And
and now it is insane, but it's considered standard now.
Right. So you
for
move
the best. Yeah.
So if you move those guys now would be so much more exciting. If you took the exciting guys from baseball when I was a kid, Ozzie Smith and Vince Coleman and those guys, like, for a guy that hates the Cardinals, I sure did say a bunch of Cardinals in a row. But if you had Vince Coleman play now, would he be that exciting? He would be Billy Hamilton. And who gives a shit about Billy Hamilton? Nobody. Because he never stole 150 bases, because that's not what happens now. So you don't play to the strengths. And that's the thing that I think baseball, like, if I could fix baseball, I would eliminate the shift.
Positions, people stay in their positions and they don't move when there's a lefty batter or a righty batter or a power hitter or whoever.
Yeah. And if they and I would put more, I know it's not but it's like stealing bases is good. it puts pressure on the
it's a
defense.
whole other element of the game that you
but
have
nobody
to pay
does
attention
it because Billy
Right.
Bean figured out the numbers were like, it's better to have a runner on first and nobody out than to risk the out.
Yeah.
You know,
so
it's
this is
better to
where
have a runner on second.
stats go too
Yeah.
far for you.
I mean,
And for the game,
it's
just
technically, I mean, the fact is it's technically true over the course of a season involving every team, but it's not true game to game.
Yes.
And
100%.
no
one talks
they
about
don't
the difference.
deal with it game to game, right? The managers have their clipboards with what has to happen for the whole season, and that doesn't.
This is going to sound like a crazy comparison, but it reminds me of like Nate Silver right now, the statistician guy, is like, you know, he has nothing to talk about because Trump's not running for president anymore. So he's talking about this like Wuhan lab leak stuff. And like his tweets are like, what do you think the probability is that it leaked from a lab? It's like, that's not how probability works. It either did or it didn't. And
Right.
I feel like there's
so the
too
answer
many
is 50-50, Nate.
Yeah, what the fuck you talking about? Like that's not true. That's not how stats should work.
Right. No. There's no, I mean, because it doesn't matter. Like, even if he figures it out. And that was boom. And that brings us right to that's not how probabilities work, which is essentially what the point of Riders of Justice was.
Oh, yes. Riders of Justice is is it Danish? A new Danish movie?
They say it in the movie a couple of times that that they're Danish or whatever.
Yes. It's a Danish film. It's stars Mads. My point is saying it's Danish is that it's a Mads Mikkelsen movie, but it's not an English language Mads Mikkelsen movie. It's one of the foreign films that he does that are foreign in America, like his most recent one that just won an Oscar, Another Round, is another Danish movie. But this movie is called Riders of Justice. It is a revenge movie that you can rent on your TV or iTunes or whatever. Why don't you talk about what this movie is, Geoff?
This movie is a Liam Neeson movie, but it has every single thing that you wish Liam Neeson movies had. It's
like a thoughtful look at the revenge.
It's got all the violence of Taken, but with all of the actual and Taken's kind of a bad example. Maybe it's better to Taken 3 or whatever, because Taken is still kind of has a little bit of that French influence.
Yeah,
but
did Luc Besson direct that or something?
He didn't direct. He wrote it. Somebody else directed it.
That's right.
But Luc Besson, if Luc Besson did it, Taken would be way better. It would be so. This is like if Luc Besson had directed Taken, because it shares more. It reminded me more of The Professional than Taken, honestly.
That's right.
Because it has that foreign movie ability that American movies don't do this, and I think it's because American audiences aren't great, but they never shift tone, and that's why whenever a movie does shift tone, people are like, "What the fuck?" Because that's nobody does it. Nobody adds comedy. Like if John Wick was funny,
right?
But that's it. It just adds some humor, and The Professional had those very violent moments, those very thoughtful moments, and then it had just some straight up
crazy Gary
whimsy.
Oldman. Yeah,
right. There was whimsy in this movie. That's a revenge thriller of a 40-year-old hitman teaching a 12-year-old how to become a murderer. There are whimsical scenes in the middle of it, and that's what this had. This had that revenge thriller movie, but dealing with what it also dealt with grief and loss and masculinity and friendship and family in ways that and in less than 2 hours it handled
in less than 2 hours in a way that never felt didactic, like they're explaining something to you and you're like, ugh, I don't care. The way this movie unfolds, it's really emotional, and you actually feel connected to the characters, and the way I don't want to spoil anything, but the way the revenge plot unspools or however, I just couldn't believe how funny this movie was while also being really thoughtful about what it's just showing. It's we're going to show you revenge and how a guy goes about it, but it's not easy for him or for anybody.
I mean, for a movie that kicks that much ass, the fact that essentially it's a movie about trauma is incredible.
And
John Wick kind of was.
Right, like John Wick's about a guy avenging his dead dog. So
but
like
but
different.
it isn't. It's a guy like
right.
It's this
just a
guy
violent
dealing
showcase.
with his wife. Like his wife,
right.
It's like that's the trauma he's really dealing with.
Yes.
The dog was able to buffer it.
It's
and
like
once
the
that was taken
moment.
from him,
right.
he had nothing that stopped it. And so then that's how he dealt with it. But they don't really, it kind of loses it. Like, and two and three are just the aftermath of one.
Yes.
So there's not, you like kind of forget that it's about trauma, but this movie is entirely about trauma and grief and loss that just has some very kick-ass action.
Yeah. Anytime it actually does like remember that it's like, oh yeah, this is an action revenge movie. Like those scenes are awesome. They're really satisfying. So great. And then it's like the other times when you're like, there are some moments that I don't want to spoil anything again, but there are moments that like are supposed to be funny that I didn't quite understand. Like when the guy like shows his ass or whatever. And I'm like,
I don't think that was supposed to be funny.
Right. Like it, right.
That
exactly.
he was like
his trauma.
He's one of the
back.
characters dealing with, because there's so many characters dealing with so much trauma and baggage from their whole lives, like coming together. That was just part of it. Like,
I just couldn't tell if that was some weird Danish joke, but I mean, I totally get it. What you're saying makes total sense.
I mean,
like,
it might be.
Yeah.
It might.
No,
be
I mean, it's
Danish
just like a
joke,
weird humor, different type of sensibility than American. But like this movie, there's scenes that are basically just like Mads Mikkelsen, go to therapy, don't do revenge, and it's like amazing how compelling the movie is. I think, you know, if it wasn't Mads Mikkelsen, it would be a harder sell, but Mads is just such a fucking good actor and it's such a great role. I thought all the supporting characters, like the three guys he's dealing with, are really great. His daughter's really great. The whole, again, we talked about stats. This movie has a whole stats, like one of the main characters thing is that he's like a stats guy and he looks at everything and like cause and effect, and like the way that's factored into the plot. This movie's great. I think this is one of the best movies I've seen this year. I thought it was great.
Absolutely. I do wish I could have seen it in the theater, but
me too. It is in a theater in New York City. I watched it before knowing that, but I should go see it. If it's playing New Year, if you're in New York or Chicago or LA, it's probably there. Otherwise, you can rent it.
That's our big recommendation. Now let's get Megan. Let's get Megan in. Talk to her about another fight. Like, this is a real life fight. People dealing with their traumas.
Yes. Here's Megan. Hello, Megan.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good.
You hear her, Geoff? Okay, great.
I can hear you.
Cool. I will do a quick intro.
Okay.
All right. Geoff asked me if I saw the White Sox Brawl, very casually mentioned if I happened to see I think it was an all-female fight in the bleachers of a White Sox game. And I said, boy, did I see that. One of my friends that I know from following this really great jam band around the country called Humphreys McGee, Megan Sanders, who's, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see her in the chat now. Hello. Megan Sanders is here, and she was also not in the brawl.
No.
But she was very close to that brawl.
Right, you were brawl adjacent.
I was a spectator to the brawl.
That's incredible.
Yeah. First of all, was this your first game back since like COVID?
No, I moved to the South Side a couple years ago, and when COVID happened, I just kept kicking myself for not going to any games. So as soon as they like made seats available, I just started buying tickets pretty regularly. So that was like my fourth game that I've been to this season.
Okay.
But my first Monday night.
Your first brawl. Also.
Yeah, my first brawl of the season.
It's funny, like I grew up a Cubs fan, and like I feel like Wrigleyville gets the like frat bro fight crowd stereotype, and I don't know what the stereotype for Sox fans are. Are they also? Is this like a common occurrence?
I've seen a couple from like across the park, so I think it's pretty frequent.
That's That's incredible. So people are just getting out of pocket. Like, I live in Cincinnati. There's an amusement park in Cincinnati called Kings Island, and they closed early on Saturday because of how many fights there were.
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me, because I think people just like have all this pent up energy from like not actually being in society for the last year. They just wanted to fight. Like, I could just tell that like they were having a great time when they were fighting. One of the girls was smiling. I saw it on the video. She's like laughing.
You know what? Let me pull up the video. Let me see if this works.
Was it Cardinals fans against White Sox fans, or was it just some White Sox fans fought each other?
So one of my friends is from Missouri, and I was with her in the game. So the one Cardinals fan that got in the mix was her, but she was trying to pull girls off of each other, and she was actually pretty successful in that.
Wow.
So
sorry, I'm trying to get the clip pulled up here, making me do a bunch of bullshit to get that done.
Well, I mean, that's okay. We could just do what we were doing before you stopped us to tell us that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So your Cardinals. So this is a rare case where a Cardinals fan is the hero of the story.
Yeah. I mean, there were no heroes. I don't even think that there were like any villains. No villains, no heroes. It was just a bunch
there's
of
definitely
drunk people.
Villains. A fight in the bleachers is all villains.
Yeah, I guess we are all villains.
Was it fun to watch? Because the White Sox won that game, yeah?
Yeah. And I think that that's what got people pumped up, because it was a pretty slow game at the beginning, and then they started scoring like later in the game. And it was right when they like cut off concessions too. So you got a lot of people who aren't quite as focused on their beers anymore and more focused on just like whatever was, happening in front of them. We started heckling the right fielder for the Cardinals around the 7th inning too. We were just nothing out of control, but like just screaming his name repeatedly, trying to get him to acknowledge us, and that didn't work. So
he never acknowledged you?
No.
That's my biggest baseball claim to fame is in the year 2000 when Griffey signed with the Cincinnati Reds. I worked at a Mexican restaurant on the river, and he ate there in like March. He was there having lunch with a friend of his, and I waited on him. And then like 5 years later, I sat in the first row in right field, and I just kept yelling that. The whole game, I would yell different things about that lunch and that restaurant until finally, like the 5th or 6th inning, he finally like gave me he made a really great catch, and I was like that. I said something like that was the catch of the day, much like black and tilapia was the catch of the day when you ate at Don Pablo's, and that's when he like finally waved at me.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah,
that was the best.
The Cards right fielder, I don't even remember his name. His name was Thomas. His last name was Thomas. Yeah, he flew out to short center field, so I think he was like trying to hit a homer just to like get us to shut up. But there was apparently a girl. This is hearsay from the internet, because I'm just like all over every social media trying to find more videos and angles of it, because it was just so funny. There was supposedly a girl flashing Andrew Vaughn, the White Sox right fielder. So we think that that's what caused the fight, because the last thing I heard before beer started flying was, well, at least I'm not a hoe. And then it was like 4 main girls on top of each other.
Do you guys see my screen right now?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm trying to circle where Megan is. You can see her in this screenshot in the back left, just smiling big.
Right? You're the face that's facing us. You're the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
so
incredible.
That's you in this classic shot of this fight that was on television. Like, this is the one that I saw first.
It was on TV?
Well, or whatever. I mean, I don't know what TV is anymore.
Yeah.
I saw
I'm sure it was
on Twitter from a website or like on a Twitter that has a TV show. So maybe.
Gotcha. Okay.
Here, let's watch this video.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. The little
That's
blonde
amazing.
girl just kept stepping into it. She just kept like, I mean, I think at one point she kind of recovered from that one and like launched her whole body, but her friend like kept pulling her back like a dish rag, like just
Yeah.
whipping her around because
This picture is so good.
yeah, I'm a little salty we didn't make it into that one because that is art.
Yeah, I want to frame this and put it on my wall.
Well, you
It's
better do it
beautiful.
quick because it's for sure going to be an NFT.
You're
Somebody's
right.
going to sell that. And the White Sox won and they scored enough runs to win, but not too many runs, right? Like that seems to be a problem with the White Sox this year is they score too many runs. They're disrespectful.
Oh
to the
yeah.
game.
Well, that's why I wanted to sit in the bleachers because I was like, okay, if Mercedes is hot, he's gonna be hitting bombs to us. It wasn't actually necessarily because I wanted to be in the middle of like the party section.
But now you know those are the seats.
Yeah, I guess for a really long time, Monday nights were half price ticket nights. So other than like the weekend games, that's like the party night because people just have few extra dollars to spend on extremely expensive stadium beers.
This game, that Monday night game, was the largest attended game of the season with 14,600 people there.
Also more than opening day even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because I guess because of COVID and stuff, now that it's actually open. Is it full capacity?
I think it was like 60%, but that was the first game that it was 60%. The other games that I've been to, they were like zip tying seats. So you couldn't even like go jump to a different section or anything like that. They really wanted to space people out, but
guaranteed rate field, baby.
Yeah,
that's what it's called. It's called guaranteed rate field.
I've heard people call it the G spot.
Well,
that's pretty good.
That I ain't no hoe. At least I'm not a hoe.
At least you're not a hoe.
I have a brick from Comiskey in my room growing up. Yeah, my parents still have it in Skokie. So to me, it'll always be Comiskey, right? No one calls it guaranteed rate field, do they? Yeah, the G spot, I guess.
I call it Sox Park.
There you go.
We're like the cell. I was actually
US Cellular Field. I forgot. That was another one.
Yep. In 5 years, who knows what the hell it'll be called.
Cash for Gold.
Probably.
It'll be like Cash for Gold Park.
There's the basketball sketch about that from like what, 98 in the first opening scene. It's like Maxi Tampon Stadium or some shit. We're pretty close.
Playtex Park.
That actually sounds pretty good, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Playtex Park sounds beautiful.
It's got the word play right in it. How long have you been a White Sox fan? Are you a White Sox?
Yeah. I was actually at the last game of Old Comiskey Park when I was like 2 months old.
Oh, wow.
So my parents they're both from the south suburbs, so they would bring us. In the 90s, other than like the Blackhawks, who were terrible, it was the cheapest ticket in town. So
yeah, I always tell people, because the Hawks now are like this amazing dynasty team, or they were, I guess. But when I was growing up, they were basically giving tickets away to see the Blackhawks. It was under $5 to go see them, and it was amazing.
Yeah, they never brought us to those, probably because they were trying to avoid like putting us in situations where we would see fights.
Yeah,
because
they should have kept you away from the White Sox.
Yeah, you can't protect me forever, Mom and Dad. Like,
it follows you. I'm scrolling through this like Chicago Sun-Times article about the fight, and your fucking mug is right there because that video is the one that's embedded in every fucking article.
Oh, it's so funny.
I can't believe we're able to.
Is this the closest you've been to history? Like you're part of history now.
I'm gonna tell my grandkids about this.
They should retire. They should give you a jersey and then retire it.
Yes, I agree.
I'm gonna make a White Sox jersey that says "I'm not a hoe."
Not a hoe.
Like as
not
my
a
name.
hoe 69. Nice.
Everyone in the bleachers should wear jerseys. Not a hoe 69.
Yeah, I don't think like the next game I go to, unless I see a fight, it's just not going to do it for me.
Yeah, your tolerance level for baseball games has just been raised. You can't just suffer through any game now.
It's too much stimulation. So now next time you go, there won't be enough.
Yeah.
Something crazy is going to have to happen. You're going to have to score so many runs, your own manager gets mad.
One of the other games I went to this season, there was a grand slam. Tim Anderson hit a grand slam. So that was pretty exciting. I think that was the first time I ever saw a grand slam, too.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a grand slam in person. That sounds memorable.
Seen a lot of things. I've not seen that.
Yeah, it seems like I would have remembered had I seen that. I remember the time I caught a foul ball by Tyler Houston in 1998 Cubs.
Wow.
Yeah. See, like, so I guess what I'm saying is if I had seen a grand slam, would have remembered it.
Well, honestly, it's a lot easier to remember the one time you caught a foul ball.
Yeah. I guess
That's
it was very exciting.
Comparison.
It was probably the same day that my dad, my dad always refused to pay for parking when we would go to Cubs games. He would drive. I know he would drive around.
You can't,
dude.
Not pay to park in Chicago forever.
Just wait till you hear how this story ends. But basically, we would drive around until he found a non-permit actual street parking spot that wasn't a meter. They barely exist. This was like in the late 90s, and even then, it barely existed. But it definitely barely exists now. There's even more parking lots that cost, $40 or whatever. But my dad shoved himself into a spot that he claimed was not a permit area. Turns out, of course, it was a permit area, and that's how I found out where the impound lot is near Wrigley. It's not even close to Wrigley. It was like an ordeal that we spent, hours after a game dealing with. So like I was a kid waiting at this like scary place for our car with like 40 to 50 other really drunk, upset Cubs fans whose cars were also there.
Yeah, all in the like same exact position.
Yeah, that's all my memories of Cubs games are. And the fact that whenever I would go, they would lose. I've been to like 100 Cubs games. They've lost 95 of them.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's my average.
Well, stop going.
We have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why my parents would take us to Sox games, because they were like, if someone throws a temper tantrum, if they lose terribly, at least we only spent like $10 on a ticket.
Right.
I like your parents.
I love my parents. The next game I'm going to is with my parents, so I take that back about wanting to see a fight. I really don't want them in the middle of that.
Well, you got to get good seats when your parents go.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
That is kind of what I worry about, though. Like, my dad, like, I was in the bleachers with my parents at a Cubs game, and people were like, yelling and cursing at each other. And even as like a 30-year-old person, like, I'm uncomfortable seeing that around my parents. Like, I just don't want them exposed to that. I'm like, I don't know. He grew up a Cubs fan. I'm sure he's seen some shit, but I don't know. People are assholes.
Yeah, I brought my parents to Lollapalooza a few years ago to see Paul McCartney, and I was definitely like just pushing little girls away from us, just being like,
"Well,
you're too drunk."
Yeah, wow. You are a concert connoisseur. You've been to how many Humphrey shows? Like 100 or more?
Over 200.
Yeah, I thought so. So like, I could see you throwing people away from you at a festival.
Yeah,
that rules. Are you going to any Humphrey shows? Did you go last weekend?
Yeah, I went last weekend.
Geoff, you got to see this jam band.
I heard them.
You've heard them?
I went to Bonnaroo one year and they played the midnight show and they were still playing when I woke up. So I heard them.
I was at Bonnaroo that year too. That's funny because I was at that show
or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's the year they were after Radiohead, and it was quite.
Why do you think I was asleep already?
Yeah, good burn. Were you in the comedy tent for that?
No, I was to sleep.
No, at the festival.
Oh yeah,
you just attended?
Yeah. No,
I didn't think you were sleeping in the comedy tent.
I slept in my own tent.
Yeah, I think that's the same year that. Were you on the Doug Loves or the Doug Interruption at one of those?
No. I was on the show with Posehn.
Oh, nice.
And Pete Holmes and Ali Wong.
when I went, oh, that's a great fucking lineup. I forget who was on the Doug thing that I went to, but it was a movie interruption at Bonnaroo. It might not have been the same year. I went to Bonnaroo like 2 or 3 years in a row, but
I don't think I knew Doug yet. Like I definitely hadn't done the show yet.
Oh wow, he was doing. It was an interruption of Rambo, like the most recent one before Last Blood, and what happened was. Everyone realized very quickly in the opening scene in which a bunch of innocent children are slaughtered that this movie wasn't ripe for comedy. And it was a very awkward but fun screening because everyone's at Bonnaroo doing drugs. Megan, I know you said you had to go. I didn't want to keep you. So thank you so much for sharing your Sox experience. That was
You're welcome.
Truly one of a kind information. We're gonna blast this out. It's gonna go viral. We're gonna get all the stories.
We got a scoop.
The fight cycle. Like I'm seeing videos of every sporting event. Like there's some shit going down. I saw a Dodgers fight.
People were throwing popcorn at Russell Westbrook last night.
I saw that. I saw a video of a dude streaking. I think at like a Nationals game.
Yes.
And like using the tarp as a slip and slide.
Dude, people are wild.
Every game. Yeah. Out of control.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Megan. This was so fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
What's up, everybody? This is Podcast But Radio. My name is Brett Arnold at Brett Redacted on Twitter. You're looking at Geoff Tate, my esteemed co-host, real host. I'm just the producer. And our guest today to talk about a very important day for cinema is here because
content.
Yes, well, cinema is now content because Amazon and Jeff Bezos just paid $8.5 billion for MGM. And MGM is like a 100-year-old movie studio that has tried to sell itself a billion times. So to parse this news, I brought on Peter Labuza at Labuza Movies on Twitter, someone I feel like I've been following and talking to on Twitter for a decade or more. He is an expert on all things movies and movie distribution and studio systems. And I believe you even have a PhD in media and cinema studies. I don't know what to even call you, but the esteemed Peter Labuza is here.
And just a researcher on media industries, and I currently teach at San Jose State University.
Right on.
But you're a doctor? PhD means doctor, right?
Dr. Labuza.
Dr. Labuza.
If you want to, technically I'm not Professor Labuza due to university honorarium requirements. So I am technically Dr. Labuza and not Professor Labuza.
Does that rub you the wrong way?
Being no, I mean, personally, I would like to have a job, a full-time. There's certain things about the academic job market which is going through its own shifts. That's a different podcast.
It really is. So I guess the first thing I should ask you is, what is your take on the news that Amazon just actually did the damn thing after years of speculation and bought a movie studio?
So my take is that this is kind of the next step in Amazon's large content business, sort of what they've been doing with Amazon Prime and streaming and trying to do films and television for years, right? If we go back, about 10 years ago, right? Amazon kind of started in a very interesting way in the distribution business of going to Cannes, picking up art house films and producing films by Spike Lee, Jim Jarmusch, right? Things that were much more in the art house specialty market. And this is sort of like the end point of where, they were competing with smaller companies like Magnolia, Neon, and then suddenly things like Lionsgate, and then television with like HBO and AMC. And now they can finally compete with the biggest boys in the business, Disney, Netflix, HBO, Warner Media, I guess being the only other one, right? This is the final step they need to really kind of submit their power that they've been trying to do in terms of this exhibition, streaming, production business for the last couple decades, right? There was even just stories, I think, a couple years ago during the Bezos divorce that, like, you know, Amazon streaming, the content they were producing wasn't making money. It's never been a profitable part of the business. And obviously, by pulling on $8.5 billion of debt, it's not sure whether it will still be a profitable business, and yet it's a step that Amazon wants to take in order to sort of help cement the competitive markets. Excuse me.
It's okay.
But sort of to cement the competitive market in Hollywood around a smaller number of companies.
And weren't there laws set up in like the 1920s or 30s that stopped, like, due to antitrust laws, like the studios used to control the means of distribution in the theaters, and then like there was this Supreme Court decision that changed that. Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah. I've been writing on this stuff recently and how streaming is really upsetting this. So go back to the old 1920s, the first rise of the 5 major studios. This would be Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, of course, and then Warner Brothers, RKO Radio Pictures, which has been defunct for decades now, Paramount, and I'm going to forget the 5th one in this. But
it's not United Artists, is it?
United Artists was one of the little 3 of the era. Universal also little, but if it's not important necessarily.
Yes.
One of the ways that the studios were able to become so big is that in most of the major cities, so places like where I am in Oakland currently, there's still a Paramount theater. There's still a Fox theater, 20th Century Fox being the other one, of course. Right. So they own these theaters in the major cities. And then they, in smaller rural communities or communities that had independent theaters, they basically threw a lot of weight in terms of how much money these studios, of the control of which films they could get, in terms of the prices they paid for them. And it was a basic classic monopoly in terms of owning production, distribution, exhibition, but also in how they didn't allow others to compete in the market, whether we're talking about independent producers trying to make films, whether we're talking about foreign markets trying to enter the US, or other independent distributors or theaters. This led for years of litigation through the 1930s and the New Deal and into the 1940. In 1940, there was a sort of setup of like, okay, maybe you can do this, but not this. But in 1948, United States v. Paramount was the case that everything comes crashing down. And basically the surrender with the studios make with the Department of Justice, DOJ, is that you can no longer own theaters, and then you can no longer bully these other smaller independent theaters around, and every film has to be kind of shopped on its own. Before, there was this process called block booking. If you were, say, a small theater in Minnesota, you couldn't just buy Gone with the Wind from MGM. You had to buy Gone with the Wind, but also like 18 movies that were all terrible and weren't going to make you money, but that was the only way you could get it. So there was a lot of rules set in place and a lot of checking. The judge who would go through and review everything, actually, this is where Ruth Bader Ginsburg got her first clerkship with. So there was a lot of issues going through. And, you know, how much did this antitrust lawsuit change things? Obviously, there was a lot of flow and ebb through the next 2 decades. Arguably, as I have said, like, this is how you get to the new Hollywood that people know and love, the rise of films of people like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Brian De Palma, you know, all these sort of legendary, because there's a lot more market flexibility. By the 1980s, in the transformation of antitrust sort of jurisprudence. This is famously Robert Bork. People know him from not making it onto the Supreme Court, but he had done a lot to change the way that people thought about antitrust, focused on this idea of the consumer welfare standard. And then under the Reagan Department of Justice, a lot of deregulation that allowed, say, someone like Firestone to own both a large amount of theaters, but also Viacom, which owns Paramount. So there was a lot of sort of deep re-regulation of the Department of sort of antitrust with other issues. Obviously, with other companies coming up, they weren't held to the same standards, but still there was sort of a quasi-agreement in terms of who could control things, how much pressure you could do. Kind of what the studios always knew is that if they valued certain theaters at a high level of sort of market pressure, that could sort of re-engineer this moment in the 1940s where the Department of Justice pressured us. That law was finally taken off the books in 2020 under the Trump DOJ, and finally the judge at the Southern District in New York got rid of it. And so now partially the reason the judge got rid of it is because there's so many new companies that are much powerful, and because the law never had anything to do with streaming. Now streaming is exhibition. So that's a long explanation, but we're at this moment where it seems like the sort of combination merger acquisition market is at running full steam ahead.
So I guess to put it in layman's terms, like block booking, for example, I guess you already explained what that is, but the studio system, it used to be the studio, they had stars under their contracts, and those stars would make exclusively movies with Paramount or with, Warner Brothers, whatever it is. And then the idea of the antitrust is, so you don't want that entity that already is making all the movies also owning the means of distribution. It's not fair. So when that rule happened, so now we kind of have how would you describe the modern studio system? Like basically we have a theatrical exhibition system. We have AMC, we have Regal, we have, I guess you'd call those independent businesses that are separate from the studio system in which those movies can now play.
Yeah, and obviously, I think if you look closely, sometimes you'll see that AMC will play more films of a certain studio over others. Regal will play certain films of certain studios over others. For years, we know that they have not been really letting Netflix into there because they won't follow their rules of a 45-day window, a 90-day window, whatever it's set up, whether we don't know what's going to be post-COVID. It's looking like 17 days. Those studios, but those theater companies also don't allow certain independent films in unless they become marketable in a way that they want. And so I think there's a lot of different right now, but the point has always been, at least for the last couple decades, right, is that AMC, Regal, Cinemark, all which are covered under NATO, not the political organization, but the National Association of Theater Owners, has its own weight to push against the Motion Picture Association, which these major studio producers are covered. And sort of at least that's been a balance. Obviously, with COVID, NATO has been losing power over the last decade. COVID put a cortisone shot in there to really reduce their power in terms of thing. And partially because streaming has allowed companies to sort of bypass the theatrical exhibition market in a way where they can just kind of reap the rewards of whatever they're making. And they'll put a little bit in theaters for a short amount, but they know the money for them is just getting people to subscribe. So, there's a lot of weird things going on in terms of streaming. There's questions of, does streaming even make money, right? There used to be, you played a movie in theaters, then you went to home video, VHS or DVD, then you got your deal with HBO or Showtime or Stars, then you went to basic cable, then you maybe, CBS.
There's layers and layers of money being
right, and that down market was really, really financially worth it as long as your film made money at the first step, right? Even if a film, as long as the film did well in its first week, it helped all those distribution deals down the road. Now it's just one pool, right? Just to take an example, The Mandalorian, the Star Wars Disney show, right, is not going to any other market besides Disney Plus, and that's the only place it will make money. And it doesn't even make money in the way that we traditionally think about things. It makes money in terms of subscribers. Our subscribers signing up for The Mandalorian, well, they have some statistics to possibly bear that out, but it's not each individual film making money in the same way.
Also, Disney is kind of set up in a way that the other ones aren't because of the merch. They at least have merch, because HBO Max, you're not going to go, nobody bought a Kong versus Godzilla. There's no toys or whatever.
Yeah, I think we'll see companies try and see what other ancillary markets. I mean, right? Like, I mean, you say that, but like also Warner Media has Space Jam 2 coming out, which is probably going to launch a whole series of Looney Tunes materials, merchandise. Who knows, a theme park, Space Jam 2 theme park. Why not? What's LeBron James going to do after, finishing his NBA career? Why not like a Vegas show with the Looney Tunes? All these opportunities to synergize whatever they possibly want. But the weird thing being, I think, as you point out, right, is that like, usually that starts with the big theatrical release, and that is the thing that we've been losing. And it's not clear. I mean, they have all these data analytics. They don't release them to the public. Right. It's just hard to know how well films are doing beyond just kind of looking at word of mouth.
Star Wars is a good example because that was once like the whole kit and caboodle was these are movies that you go see in a theater. And now, how many years has it been since we got a Star Wars in theaters now? It's at least a year, right? It was like
2.
We didn't have
one
this
2019.
Yeah. So like this is I was going to say it's the first time in a long time, but like we already had a long gap of no Star Wars. But then we got a gap or then we had a time period of a new Star Wars every year. Sometimes I think it was 2 a year for a minute. And now they oversaturated that market and they know it. And they have slowed down on the movies. They went all into Disney Plus. They've got 1 million fucking shows. They've got 2 or 3 already out, and they're reporting great numbers and their subscriber growth. As Peter said, the metric that you judge success by has changed.
It's interesting. I do want to caution Disney's numbers. I've been really paying attention to this and a little specious of a little. Obviously, they had huge growth at the beginning, and they are happy to talk about their, I think, about 112 million subscribers. But one of the things that Disney did that I think often industry analysts miss is a large part of Disney Plus's subscribers are part of the Indonesian Disney Plus that's just paired with Hotstar. Hotstar was a very popular company in India for various things, for cable subscriptions. They have a lot of the cricket tournament on there. And also, most importantly, Hotstar, either you can get it entirely free with ads, or I think a subscription for an entire year costs $20 US. Obviously, $20 US is like a lot in terms of certain communities in India. But one of the things that's been happening in Disney's numbers, if you've been following their quarterly earnings, is the amount of profit per subscriber has dropped by something like $1.50. It used to be like $5. Now it's down to like $3.75 or something, right? So Disney is picking up subscribers and pitching that to their stock investors, which the stock investors just want to see the subscriber number go up. Meanwhile, they're losing more money as they add on people, right? It's always a question of companies like Uber, WeWork, right? If like scale is the most important thing, we'll figure out profits. Eventually.
I mean, let's not compare it to Uber and stuff, because they're not losing more money. They're just making a little less.
Yeah,
they're still making $3.75 times 112 million a month is still pretty good.
My question is, when you have to produce 8 Star Wars streaming series, and we don't know what the budgets are those going to be, at a certain point, the economics are going to get messy. I don't know, because like Netflix has done this for years. Where Netflix, I
was going to say, they don't even make money, right?
Define money, right? We can go into a very philosophical thing, right? And this is Amazon, just to kind of circle back, this is Amazon's plan, I guess, right? Is that like,
domination.
Julie Alexander at IGN has really pointed out, I think they're mostly spending the money for James Bond, and they really believe that James Bond can be equal to a Marvel and a Disney, and who knows what their plan is. Obviously, they had to have the James Bond. One of the key unique parts of this deal is that though MGM has owned the James Bond library since United Artists went under in the 80s, there are still certain rules tied to the original intellectual property, going back to the Fleming estate and whoever helped create, Dr. No in the 60s, that they had to sign off on this deal, which means Amazon had to present to them something that they liked about what James Bond could be in the future. And it wasn't just going to be probably 4 movies starring, I don't know, John Boyega or whoever. It's probably going to be a multiverse of 00s and things.
Yeah, 00. We got to see 001 through 6 before we see 007.
So I forgot about that. But so they did all of this basically so they could get No Time to Die. Like, didn't they put in an offer, like a $200 million offer or something last year?
700.
700?
Or no, that's what MGM wanted, was 700 million, and Amazon balked at that. But Amazon said, like, well, if we can own the Bond franchise going forward and have the means to, produce and, figure out some sort of environment to make this profitable in the way that Synergy has moved from company levels to property levels and storytelling levels, that's going to be the play. And so, I think my friend Julia is right when she says that the James Bond property was worth probably about $4 billion to MGM, and the rest of the library is worth another $4 billion.
But what do they? I just can't even think of anything they have, because didn't MGM sell off all their pre-1986 stuff to Warner Brothers or whatever, like years ago?
Yeah. So I've been trying to track and make sure I get this all right.
Wizard of Oz is not.
In the big push for television rights and everything, a lot of this got sold to Turner Entertainment. So many of the classic MGM films of the sort of 30s and 40s, is not going to really be covered under Amazon, because these were sold to Turner Entertainment, which is now property of Warner Media, so they can play on Turner Classic Movies and still often do. The bigger question, I think, is mostly the United Artists properties. So this is James Bond. This is, I guess, 70s Woody Allen films. So Amazon's got more Woody Allen to deal with. But a lot of just, there's 4,000 titles. There's way more television properties because United Artists produce a lot of television.
MGM sneakily produces a lot of TV, including Shark Tank, very popular things.
Survivor, right? Yeah. There's a lot of just different things, and think of it, each one of these properties is a bet in whatever new iteration Amazon might make, right? The point is, and just look at the Lord of the Rings stuff that they're trying to do, right? Is
$500 million budget.
What you're trying to do is just get to the next Game of Thrones. Right? If you can get the one Game of Thrones, you're locked in for quite a few years, right? If you can get to the next Marvel, you're locked in for many, many years. And so it's a huge betting game of different properties. But really what it also does is, if we think about Amazon moving from indie distribution to mid-market distribution to big Hollywood distribution, MGM, in its, obviously not really a large distribution company as much as a production and rights holder. They've had the Rocky franchise, they've had Bond, and I think, you can go on Wikipedia and see what franchises they technically own. Right? They've been a mid-market player along with Lionsgate and others, and that's just eliminating one more person to have to compete against. And it helps them sort of move to that next level of okay, we're done with the mid-market people. Lionsgate, who knows how long it will last before it has to sell itself to Netflix or whoever. And then we can compete with the biggest players on there and dominate this sphere.
Is the reason I'm able to go and watch movies at the Netflix-owned Paris Theater in New York, is that because of the Trump DOJ decision, or is that irrelevant?
No, it's not, though. The question is what happens. So Amazon does own the landmark theaters,
Right.
which are popular indie spaces. And I'll be curious, right? If No Time to Die, it's like, well, you have to go to a landmark theater.
Wow.
For the
Yeah.
first 2 weeks of release or something might be something. The question with the Paris, right? The Paris has been on chopping block for years, and Netflix also has a deal with the Egyptian in Los Angeles and the American Cinematheque, and Disney owns a theater in Hollywood, and right next to the Chinese, called the El Capitan. Right, these are one-off theaters. Now, Netflix and Disney were not part of the Paramount agreement, so they never had to follow. And
it was just like everyone was just following it because it was the lay of the land.
Yeah, and owning one theater is not owning a market, right? So one of the things, if we go back to the 1948 decision, as laid out, is that what the judge said in 1948 in his opinion was that it wasn't illegal to own production, distribution, exhibition, but it was the power that the Motion Picture Association was using at the time to prevent other competitors. So owning a couple theaters here and there isn't going to be a question. Amazon owning 200 landmark theaters is probably a question that will come up when the DOJ reviews this case.
Right. Huh.
So, are we thumbs up or down on it? Is it going to be, so is Amazon going to be like the MGM, like MGM Plus? Like, is that what's going to, they're just going to have gather them all up and have them on their platform?
I think Amazon has put in too much effort. Like, it's going to be Prime Video, whatever it is, I think.
Right.
Like, I don't think.
Well, yeah, they're not going to change the name, but it's going to be.
But it will just be like, Amazon is now the home of James Bond and all your favorite MGM players.
Yeah, I think it's always been Prime has been the deal to get people into, and now there's just going to be even more reason to sign up than the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or whatever, in terms of things, and people will just go along because they will think, great, well, okay, I'm signing up because I want to watch Lord of the Rings and whatever James Bond series, and great, I get 2-day free shipping at the lowest labor exploitation possible.
That's what's interesting to me about Amazon is they have their whole play isn't even their play for movies is just like a small fraction of the pie, and they just want people to pay for Prime. They don't really care about the video. I read in the article in the New York Times today that like Prime users spend like $3,000 a year or something on Amazon. Like they're just going for, we are converting someone into an Amazon customer that not only watches their movies with us, but literally buys their groceries with us, buys their furniture with us, buys their clothes with us. And that's a little more dystopian than like Netflix.
Yeah,
which is we're making movies.
I've been advocating for an antitrust split of streaming for a couple years now. I should have some articles out, if not this summer, in the fall, looking at this in terms of, right, this is like the classic problem of the people who say the consumer welfare standard, because Brett, as you say, right, like it makes it so convenient, it's great for consumers, but it hurts production, it hurts labor, and someone's going to start to get hurt, as we've seen in other parts of Amazon's distribution business in terms of how they control other markets and how they stiff arm other competitors out.
Yeah. Like you can find Amazon, finding what's working on their store, someone selling their own hat at a store, right? And then Amazon goes, oh, this hat they're making, we can make it ourselves.
Amazon Basics issue.
Yeah.
And obviously it's harder to do that with movies and television.
Well,
right? Like
Asylum.
Well, I mean, but it's like actually harder to then get someone to watch the Asylum video. You can do it in the Asylum, but
the Asylum business model, which if you're not familiar, is like the snakes on a train coming out the same day that snakes
Transmorphers.
Yeah. The whole business model is we hope your mom or your brother or whoever's at the video store accidentally gets this one instead of the real one.
But what I've
had a little different.
Oh yeah, fun. Marketplace confusion is a really that's a real classy way to go.
If you separate production from distribution streaming, if we look at that as sort of on a combined say, I don't know, all the films that let's just go with Disney. If Disney wants to make as many Star Wars and Marvel films and, you know, live action remakes, whatever, but then say once they make them and they can do the theatrical, we'll even allow them to do the theatrical market. But then they say, well, you have to sell to Netflix streaming or Amazon streaming or I don't know, like, let's just make up a new company that exists. And, you know, Disney would probably look and be like, well, it's probably actually into our financial advantage to sell to all three of these companies at once. And then there's a lot more competition in the market. There's competition in terms of making better streaming sites. We all know that all these sites have terrible user interfaces or UIs. They're impossible to navigate. It's impossible to find things. And they prioritize their own content over others. So all this is making the competition on every set of the level harder for anyone who doesn't own that competition to exist. So it's just sitting there asking to be, you know, someone to come along and be like, I don't think this market actually makes sense and it's not fair for other people. And if you're an independent producer, if you're even just a Lionsgate, like, you're looking at this and saying, wow, it really sucks that we can't, you know, we're pretty good at what we do. People like our movies. People should be going to see Saw 8 or whatever, you know, within reason. But we can't compete in this market because we can't get our eyes on streaming and we can't get our eyes in theaters, and, you know, we're being pushed out. And that's the point of antitrust laws, to make it so if people want to compete in a market, they should have the opportunity to, in a way that's fair, that isn't just, I have to join the biggest company.
That kind of gets to the issue of, like, when Netflix would buy a movie at a festival and then they own it and it's great and it's awesome that an independent filmmaker got a deal with Netflix, but then the movie just kind of dies a death on the website because no one can find it.
Exactly. I mean, that's my exact point, right? Like, I mean, I think Netflix is better at pushing their own material or even acquired material. It's just really the point of, like, I look at a company like, say, Kino Lorber, which has been relying on, you know, some Netflix streaming to help, you know, boost their numbers in terms of these interesting films. Those are buried beyond belief in everything. They can't get a foothold in the market in a way that if you go to an indie theater, you know, an indie theater, as much as we want to say, like, obviously there's some theater houses that are bigger than others, but it's a fair landscape. And the theater itself wants to get as many people into seats as possible, right? Netflix has no incentive, once they buy the license from a company like Kino Lorber, to get eyeballs on that. There's no distribution deal where they have to sell a certain percent of subscriptions or whatever. It's just there, and, you know, Kino Lorber will take the money. And I think that's what's been happening with the festival market. Is you look at Netflix and Amazon, and they are offering more monetary incentives in terms of these flat deals. So look at something like Malcolm and Marie, which was sold for $30 million, which is not a $30 million movie. It was probably a, you know, if it was Neon bought it or A24 bought it, it would have been like a $15 million film. But Netflix can, you know, bully the market out of these other people and be like, you don't get to compete in here unless you have the big boys. And Amazon can do this because Amazon Web Services is the most profitable company in the United States. Netflix can do this because that's what the stockholders and shareholders want them to do, and will continually buff up the stock price even though the debt is accumulating. So there's all these weird ways that the market isn't playing fair to these people.
So who's the winner in the Amazon MGM deal? Because in my mind, MGM is the clear winner here, in that they got, the New York Times article said that Amazon paid 40% more than like all other offers on the table.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what the people who actually own and work at MGM are planning to do. And mostly, I assume they're, you know, buying a private island and calling it a day. And like, that kind of seems like at the end of the deal. I mean, we'll see. You know, I don't know as much about who works in Amazon. I mean, I know that Ted Hope is there. Scott Foundas, who used to help run the New York Film Festival, is there, and they've been doing more in the indie acquisition. I don't think they really work in production. There was a big switch a few years ago, infamously, and this was all built around, there was the flying balloon movie, I forget
I forget the name.
with
no,
Felicity Jones.
it was
maybe?
Felicity Jones and
Eddie Redmayne.
the guy I don't like. Yeah, Eddie Redmayne. It's a movie that doesn't exist. Like it looked like it should have been an IMAX movie, but it straight up went to Amazon.
Well,
are they the parents of the kid that got in that balloon that flew away?
No,
that's a slightly different. The Balloon Boy. I'm
Balloon
surprised
Boy.
it's a Balloon Boy movie, but
the movie's
right,
called The Aeronauts.
The Aeronauts, right? This was the moment in the switch where Amazon decided they're no longer going to focus on prestige. We need to compete with the large companies if we want to be financially profitable. And so, Amazon looks at this and be like, we've got, intellectual property is hot right now. Everyone loves an IP for some reason. So they think they're going to do well here. The people who best got this is the MGM side.
They got hella paid. Amazon just has money to throw. If anybody else bought MGM, the deal would have been way less. So in my mind, MGM's the winner here. Do you think this? I guess we've been talking about this, but in a general sense, there's not really like a broad, like this is going to change the movie industry lesson from this particular deal, right? Like this is just kind of one of many. It's just kind of a sign of the times of like what's happening to these old movie studios. Or do you think this is like Amazon buying MGM means that every other studio is in contention and might be bought?
Well, Paramount seemed to have almost been bought by a Chinese company for years.
Paramount keeps selling off their fucking movies to places like Amazon, like Without Remorse and that other one, that trailer just came out today with Chris Pratt, the Tomorrow War.
But I've always looked at like, I feel like Sony's been really, really smart in this just to not do this. And right, like they've made this deal with Netflix to do their high profile films to go from after the theatrical window to the streaming window at probably way inflated prices again. Right. Sony's just looked at this and said, why are we going to compete in this market? We're already too many years late. And we can just do well, which is focus on production. Production works. It's financially viable for the most part. We have a great set of both films and television programs, and we can develop whatever we want and sell it. This is the way that television worked for many, many years throughout the 80s and 90s during the FinCEN years. So there's just like, I don't know what the market's going to look like. I guess Universal's been the one. I guess, does Universal have it? Peacock exists, but like, I think we're looking at, as we've seen Silicon Valley move into like Hollywood with Netflix, Apple trying to compete in this landscape as well. Amazon, and I don't know who else will there. I don't know when Google's going to really decide like, well, we need to compete here. I don't know. This entire focus on content, as we're seeing, is really developing in some strange ways, but we're really just seeing everything combined. Netflix announced they're getting into the podcast game, and they've been talking and looking into acquiring video game studios. Right. We're just seeing more and more consolidation happen at this accelerating rate. Josh Hawley tweeted about the Amazon deal, which shouldn't go through, but I find most of his antitrust talk to be just talk. He doesn't really seem to be interested in actually presenting legislation beyond like a free speech bill. I don't think.
The Republican bad faith arguments on this stuff, like they'll often accidentally be right by being like, this is a problematic deal, like talking about the Amazon deal. Even I saw some Republicans say, but like they haven't said that about the other mergers they don't care about because they're not owned by Jeff Bezos.
Nobody's talking about new taxes on these issues. So, but there is movement in the DOJ and the antitrust as Lena Khan's nomination goes through at the FTC. Will go through. I don't believe President Biden has nominated anyone to run the antitrust subsection of the DOJ, but we do have these large antitrust cases against Google, against Facebook's acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp. The Epic v. Apple case just wrapped up the trial
today.
portion. Now, these cases are going to take a decade because antitrust is a slow slow process, and they're all going to have to go up to the Supreme Court, then back down, then up, then down. And it's going to be a mess. I think there's a calculus there. And, what I've been advocating for, and, Senator Amy Klobuchar, if you're listening to this,
she is.
ask the questions about what might be going on in terms of this Hollywood content acquisition. There's been this focus on the bigger tech companies and others, but there hasn't been the same questions being asked about the way that content distribution and acquisition and streaming is going, even though it seems clear as day to, I think, anyone who studies media industries.
Right on. Geoff, do you have any questions for Peter before we let him go? It was very informative.
Have you ever, are you familiar with the Bader-Meinhof idea?
I'm not familiar with the idea.
It's where you never hear about a thing, and then you hear it, and then as soon as you learn about it, you hear about it again right away. I'd never heard the words Kino Lorber until last night. I saw a bunch of I was watching some trailers and I saw that come up, and I was like, what is that? Like, it didn't have any other words on the screen with it. Like the card was just a Kino Lorber, and I couldn't figure out if it was like a director or what, but then you said it, and I was like, oh, I gotta.
Kino Lorber is an iconic. Yeah, explain.
In my brain, it's just the easy, small, indie foreign film distribution company to think about in terms of things. Sometimes it's not the best example, but it's the one that my brain is like, oh, Kino Lorber.
They're like world cinema. I would say there's a lot of Criterion Collection films that are Kino Lorber releases, and Kino Lorber releases like their own shit too.
It was like I was watching trailers for, I think, Korean movies.
Oh yeah.
Long Day Journey and Tonight. What's your favorite one? Your favorite Kino Lorber movie? Do you have one?
I would have to actually look. I mean, I've done, full disclosure, I've done a couple. Kino Lorber has a huge monopoly actually on DVD distribution.
That's right.
Speak in terms of, they just acquired, I forget which company, I believe Artsploitation or something, but I've done some work for them in terms of writing liner notes about some of the historical films they did. So they have actually a deal with Paramount, and they did a Gloria Swanson movie, The Star of Sunset Boulevard, one of her silent films, Manhandle, directed by Alan Dwan, that I think is fantastic. So I did the liner notes for that one. But DVD is a small market, and what Kino Lorber does is they're releasing things that literally nobody else has interest in releasing. So that's not the same thing as a monopoly otherwise. And they, when you're in a very small specialty market. So all hands to Kino Lorber for doing the hard work of releasing classic movies on Blu-ray and DVD market, which is going to be dying out. And that's, the other part of the Amazon is if you've got United Artists releases or other releases of films that you want to see again and again, buy up whatever Blu-rays exist, because there's not going to be any under Amazon.
Buy up your RoboCop Blu-rays. I'm trying to think of other United Artists movies. I already own all of them, thankfully, but there's a ton of movies that are now owned by Amazon that, if Peter's right, you should buy up the DVDs if you're a fan, because I think that is something that will be lost in the future, is physical media. People are going to, especially if you're owned by Amazon, who owns a streaming site, they're not going to give a shit about putting out these movies on physical media in the future.
Yeah.
And I believe didn't Warner just announce they're done? Or like Warner Archive?
They're on the. I think it hasn't been officially announced, but there's a lot of hints that Warner Archive, which obviously has been a godsend for cinephiles for years in terms of putting things out in high quality and in good release, is gonna just finally be pushed out. Though I would say that was more of a plan under AT&T,
right?
And what they wanted to do, and I don't know, the biggest problem with Warner Media is how much turnover there was within their organization in terms of who was making decision making. And I don't know if that's going to be reversed under Discovery if that merger acquisition goes through. But it's definitely going to be a question in terms of, if they bring some of the old boys band back, who was the person who's been keeping and pushing and making sure that Warner Archive was never in the chopping block? Because it's not like, even if Warner Archive loses money, it's not like a huge money loser in the way that a Batman v Superman ends up being a huge money loser for the studio or something.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I mean, it's like how Netflix still has a arm that sends me DVDs in the mail. I still get them. I feel like I'm one of 12 people that still subscribes, but I appreciate them losing money to send me DVDs in the mail.
I think it's actually profitable.
Is that right?
The biggest thing what they're doing is, right, they're not buying more DVDs, or they're only buying like a small amount, and they're like, they've reduced whoever's working the warehouse to it's probably like Raiders of the Lost Ark at the end, where it's like one or two people who are just like scrambling through old boxes. But but it actually is a profitable part of the business.
I've called their customer service line, like when a disc shows up, broken or something, and it's always the same person. It's one person manning the Netflix DVD phone. Peter,
awesome.
this was really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Do you have anything to plug? Do doctors plug things?
Oh, I mean, I have an article actually out on this sort of, if you're curious about this antitrust issue and how we got from the moment of the end of Paramount to this moment today in a way that's very well. It's an article in film history. It's available on JSTOR, which you can get free access to 100 articles right now if you sign up for JSTOR. The article's in film history. It is called, give me 1 second. I have it right here. I
love it.
We'll post the link too in the
I love
description
it.
of the show.
Academic title.
So the article is called Hard, Fast, and Brokerage, Irving H. Levine, the Filmmakers and the Birth of Conglomerate Hollywood. It's about the moment which Ida Lupino, one of the first major feminist directors of the 50s, tried to upend the Hollywood system, and the people who were working for her, these entrepreneurs, instead found a way to reconfigure the entire distribution network to bring back the old system of vertical integration. So it's a story of art and business winning out in kind of slightly horrifying fashions, as I try and argue.
Wow. Well, all right. Well, we'll be sure to check that out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm
so
on
much,
Twitter
Peter.
at Labuza Movies, where I'm usually screaming about, if not baseball, then antitrust.
That's right.
Oh, wow. The baseball and antitrust go hand in hand.
That is true.
All right. Thanks again, Peter.
Thank you.
See ya.
You're listening to PBR Podcasts Radio.
Heineken, fuck that shit.